Up to 70 people have been confirmed dead by 1700 GMT and just about 80 injured in a dawn attack in Kenya's eastern town of Garissa. And this comes right as East Africa's biggest economy was embarking on an initiative to rebrand itself and hopefully revive its tourism sector as a whole. It's a sad day for the East African nation. We'll have the details on developments from the Garissa siege and plenty more. Some are calling this the Buhari bounce. The Nigerian stock market has hit an 18-week high. And we'll be looking at affordable alternatives for disposable sanitary pads that are keeping poor girls in school. Let's start with the latest developments in Kenya, where a hostage situation continues at a university campus in the eastern town of Garissa. Al-Shabaab gunmen attacked the Garissa University College at dawn on the 2nd of April, killing at least 70 people, at least by 1700 GMT, and they have taken hostage so far an unknown number. To date, 500 students have been accounted for on the campus. It has a total student population of over 800. In various media appearances throughout the day, the Kenyan head of state, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, gave assurances about the steps that the government has taken to deal with the situation. While speaking to diaspora investors earlier on, he called on tourist source countries not to issue travel advisories.
I have not heard them issue travel advisories against the British who go to Paris. I have not heard them issue travel advisories against other European countries that have also been victims of terrorism. The whole world today is under threat from terrorism. This is why we are saying this is a global problem that requires a global response. We in Kenya are playing our part to the maximum. Right? What we are doing in Somalia, we are playing our part. And we would think that our friends would be in the front line of saying we want to support, we want to encourage Kenya in its battle against terrorism. And in fact, we want to send a very strong message that they will not intimidate us with their acts of terror. And this really is what you would expect, you know, a friend to do. And that's why we greatly welcome, as much as they don't want their taxi drivers to come, President Obama has said he's coming.
Kofam Rangers on the ground in Garissa with more data on this hostage situation as it develops. He joins us now on the phone. Kofa, give us a rundown on the latest developments so far.
Well, Rama, it has gone a bit quiet at the moment, unlike a few hours ago where we could hear gunshots and explosions coming from the university compound. In fact, we are getting unconfirmed reports that the siege might be over. We understand that some of the suspected Al-Shabaab members have blown themselves up, and one of them who was trying to escape has been arrested. But those are just unconfirmed reports. Of course, we'll be following that closely.
At the last comparable hostage situation in reference at this point to Westgate, there was quite a bit of confusion at some point over which agency was in command of operations. Who is in charge of the hostage rescue operation at the moment? Is it the army running the show? Is it the police?
Well, Rama, for the better part of the day, we had not gotten the chance to get access into the campus itself. Police officers, the members of the Kenya Defence Forces have been manning that area. They've been refusing access to anyone into that area. But from the look of things and from what we have seen, it's clear that it is KDF.
Right. It seems, of course, we're having problems with that particular line. We'll try and clear that up and get back to Kofam Renji a little later on. He's, of course, on the ground in Garissa. Now, we're still in Kenya, though. Kenya's government wants to make it a lot easier for private companies to not just invest, but also operate in the country to boost growth in net employment levels. The East African nation has been making quite a few changes to administration and infrastructure in order to achieve this goal. These include multi-billion-dollar investments in new roads, a standard gauge rail line costing billions, as well as enormous untapped geothermal power.
Kenya's economy is expected to grow by over 6% this year, according to the World Bank. This is thanks to reforms being put in place by the government and the Kenyan Private Sector Alliance.
I think we're an example in Africa that stands out as a hugely reformed society and really ready for a lot more change. Factor in, to add to this, our commanding human capital advantage. And yes, we do have the best human capital. I'm not being arrogant about Kenya, but yes, we do have the best human capital in Africa. Our access to the sea, and of course, a fast improving port and logistics hub for East Africa. On top of that, let's pile our heavy energy investments that we're doing right now. And of course, the status of the regional manufacturing hub, a financial and communications hub, an airlines hub, a regional business hub for sub-Saharan Africa.
But all has not been rosy. Corruption in the country has been at an all-time high. In an unprecedented move, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta last week ordered about 175 state and public officials accused of engaging in the vice to step aside to allow investigations. He is now urging the private sector to take cue.
Corruption is not a one-way street, it is a two-way street, and we must be honest with ourselves. For every taker, there is a giver, and the giver comes from the private sector, be it local or international firms. There is no one-way street in corruption. You don't take money from the trees. You take money from human beings like yourselves sitting here. Right? This is the truth. And I have already given direction to the Attorney General that as much as we are going to take action on those in government who are the takers of corruption, we are going to amend our law to ensure that we also incorporate the giver.
And you've said it, we're backing you up on this one. And that all be brought to book. Of course, whoever's guilty, even private sector players. Because if they are also there, they also need to step aside from corruption. And I think the important thing is, from today onwards, let's have everybody saying no to corruption.
Both the Kenyan government and the private sector have agreed to focus more on value addition to enhance the local value chain, create jobs and boost the manufacturing sector as a whole. Noel Makugu, CCTV.
Over in West Africa, Nigeria's main stock index ended trading ahead of the long Easter weekend firmly in the green, with the gains of over 300 basis points, vaulting it to an 18-week high. Now, given Thursday's trading data, the Nigerian all-share index has posted gains for the last 10 straight trading sessions, and that has enabled it to erase all the losses so far this year, following, of course, the successful elections held on the 28th of March. Investors also seem to be betting that the president-elect, Muhammadu Buhari, will deliver on his pledges to improve Africa's largest economy, even though at this point in time we have no idea who his economic team will be. Nigeria is currently battered by a combination of global oil prices that have fallen by over half since June last year, a much weaker naira, and an insurgency by Boko Haram that has ravaged the northeastern end of the country. Let's expand this conversation now and reel in two individuals from London and Lagos. Kiri Blackenshop joins us from London. Deji Badmus has been covering the elections, of course, and economic matters for us as well from Lagos, Nigeria. Kiri, let's start with you. Nigerian equities and bonds, they have rallied fairly strongly this week. Are foreign investors on your end buying because the elections went smoothly, or are they buying because they're betting that a Buhari administration will be by default better than Jonathan's?
Well, analysts are saying investors here have bought in because we saw a largely peaceful presidential poll. There's also not much of a downside risk in such a tight race. And now that a new government has come to power, the country can turn its attention to the other big issues. And that's going to be no small feat. Firstly, there's the budget that's taken a battering by falling oil prices. Next up, the naira, which has also suffered due to that slump in crude prices and really allowing the currency to find an appropriate level. But there's also the concern over Boko Haram. Just a day after he was voted in, we saw President-elect Muhammadu Buhari really promised to spare no effort to defeat the Islamist militant group, and analysts say a change in government could be the one thing to make a difference there.
Deji, on the 1st of April, we spoke quite a bit about the potential picks for the economic team in the Buhari administration. Let's focus on oil today. Diezani Alison Madueke is the outgoing oil minister. Is she likely to retain this post? And if she is to be replaced, what are the likely replacements?
Well, Rama, I doubt very much that Mrs. Diezani Alison Madueke would retain her position. She's one of the most criticized government officials as we speak under the regime of President Goodluck Jonathan. So I do not see the possibility of her retaining her position as the Minister of Petroleum. Now, as to who would replace her is very difficult to tell at the moment because President-elect Buhari just got his certificate of return. The election was concluded just about 2-3 days ago. So, but there's no question that by now you would expect that the president-elect would have a clear idea of who he wants to be his oil minister. But, we just can't say for sure that he's decided on that. But that is one position that everybody will be looking out for who he appoints as the oil minister. And it's one area too that Buhari has said he intends to cleanse because it's one area that he says is corrupt, that for instance the country's NNPC, that's Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, he says is corrupt, and that corporation is under that ministry. So we just wait and see who takes over from Alison Madueke. But as for Alison Madueke continuing, I doubt very much that is going to happen, Rama.
Indeed. Kiri, the president-elect has put out a plan there to create 1 million new jobs a year, but very, very thin on implementation details. What do investors on your end expect to see him do in order to attain that goal?
Well, put simply, investors don't actually expect that many jobs to be created. This promise of 1 million jobs a year was among Buhari's swathe of election sweeteners, which of course also included a pledge to clamp down on corruption and boost growth. Now, Nigeria has seen a huge demographic surge in the workplace. 1.2 million people joined the labour market in 2013, and economists say jobs are likely to be created due to that surge rather than action from the government. But while jobs will be created in this economy, analysts I've spoken to say no one is buying Nigeria on its jobs promise.
Indeed. Deji, let's focus on more economic promises here, several of them being made in the course of the campaign. Conditional cash transfers, for example, for the 25 million poorest Nigerians, raising agricultural output, setting up a national health insurance scheme. This is an enormous basket of goodies. How can all of them be financed?
That's the biggest question Buhari would have to answer, because as we speak today, the government is faced with a very serious revenue shortfall. And analysts have said, look, Buhari is going to have a problem to raise money to finance some of those goodies he promised during the campaign. So we just wait and see. But there's no question that Buhari is going to have a very tough time. You know what the prices of oil are. But then Buhari has also come out to say, look, even though Nigeria is suffering as a result of the fall in global oil prices, he's come out to say corruption is the issue, that if you're able to plug the hole on corruption, you would be able to make enough savings that would be enough for the government to spend and for him to spend on some of the social programs, for instance, he's promised. But then, how to deal with this issue of falling oil prices, which of course will definitely affect government revenue, remains to be seen. But the good news for Buhari, I should say, is that at least we're beginning to see that oil prices are now beginning to pick up, and he no doubt would be praying that that momentum is sustained, and if that is sustained, then he would be able to get the money he needs to carry out his social programs. Of course, he's also said he's going to concentrate very much on agriculture and try to diversify this economy away from oil, concentrate on agriculture. But there's no question at all that whether we like it or not, oil for now will continue to be the mainstay of this economy. It will continue to be the main driver of the economy, because that is where a substantial amount of the government revenue comes from. And I do not see that coming to an end very soon. Rama?
Indeed. Final question to you, Kiri. Let's talk about something that's tied to the hip with oil prices, the Naira. It's posted some gains in the parallel market over the last 2 days, nothing on the scale that we've seen with respect to gains from the NSE. But given the still weak oil prices in a relative sense, where do traders expect the Naira to settle eventually?
Well, of course, we saw the Naira firm to 210 to the dollar on the parallel market following that election result, and that's from $2.26 a week ago. It did, however, trade within the $1.99 to $1.99.50 band on the official interbank market, where it's really been stuck since February. But analysts I've spoken to say they don't expect it to settle there. They say the currency should find a level in the parallel market around the 220 mark, and have really been saying that for the past 2 to 3 months. But they have added there is some downside risk, with, of course, oil the biggest driver there.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you for your input tonight. Kiri Blankensop live in London, and Deji Badmus, of course, in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's head over to Malawi now. The country plans to spend up to $20 million importing maize this year. Why? Floods and droughts. They're expected to substantially cut this year's harvest, and that's according to government ministers in a statement made on the 1st of April. Torrential rains have forced Malawi to declare half the country a disaster zone. Now, this same country had a bumper crop of 3.9 million metric tons in 2014 and a surplus of over 1 million tons. Agriculture Minister Alan Chiambekeze said his department is still assessing the flood damage, however, and will release a crop estimate soon. Now, if Malawi does have a deficit and it needs to import, it could get supplies from fairly close by. Zambia is expecting a record harvest, and in fact, it plans to export some 800,000 tons of white maize this year. However, from a macroeconomic perspective, there's a bit of a problem. You see, a poor harvest in Malawi will put upward pressure on inflation, which is currently running at almost 20%. Quick run through the markets here for you. This, of course, being Thursday, we're heading into the Easter weekend, 4-day weekend. Who doesn't like that across the board? So we might as well look at the year-to-date gains across the board. Fairly green numbers all over. Egypt, of course, lowest so far among the markets to track, up only 0.4% in the year-to-date. The highest numbers, surprisingly, coming through from the JSE at about 6% or so. Nigeria, keep an eye on this. If that momentum that we're seeing this week continues, we'll actually have far higher gains next week. Coming up next, we'll be looking at Gulf states which are looking to Africa as they try to diversify away from oil. And South Africans are turning to alternative sources of power as Eskom fails to keep the lights on.
Sustainable development and a commitment to developing partnerships with Africa. Some of the key phrases already used at the Africa Global Business Forum here in Dubai.
There is a need for a predictable environment in which investors have to put their money.
Welcome back to the program right here on Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now, as Gulf states are looking to diversify the economies away from oil, Africa is fast becoming their go-to destination. Representatives from 20 Omani companies spent 3 days in Ethiopia this week looking for investment and trade opportunities. The population of 93 million, the country's GDP has grown by an average of 9.1% over the last 10 years. Ethiopia's economy is generating quite a bit of interest among companies based in Oman. Bilateral trade between the two countries has been growing, but there's still plenty of upside potential. The total value of Omani exports dropped by 8.5% by the end of July 2014, mainly due to the decrease in the prices of oil and gas.
We want to see increased economic, investment and business relations between our two friendly countries, and we want to robust it because we both have a lot to offer to each other for our mutual benefits.
I want to predict and to see how Ethiopia is going to be in the next at least 25 years, because I don't plan to come here for a short hit and run. It should be a long-term relationship.
Bilateral trade between Ethiopia and Oman has been improving and growing during the past few years. Thus, the total trade turnover of the two countries reached 24.5 million USD in 2013 from only 2.5 million USD in 2004. In this regard, Ethiopia's total export to the Oman between 2004 and 2013 was 7,253,635 USD, while the total import from the Oman in the same period was $113,954,000 USD.
Now, for many South Africans, regular power cuts have now become a way of life since Eskom is unable to meet all of the country's power demand. That lack of reliable electricity has now compelled some South Africans to turn to alternative power sources to fill the gap. As Sumitra Naidu reports on What's Hot tonight.
Brad Clark is an architect and lives on the outskirts of Johannesburg. He made the decision to go off the national power grid 4 years ago and has not looked back.
I decided mainly for a reliability factor, to control my own energy supply in my own house for myself and my family. Well, we've been here for 4 years and we haven't had a power failure yet, where my neighbours 2 or 3 times a week have power outages.
For many South Africans, a shortage of electricity is an inconvenience and also poses a security risk. Clark spent $35,000 on designing and transforming his home to become energy efficient and environmentally friendly, relying only on natural energy resources to run it.
Normal appliances besides the stove all work off our solar panels, so the lights, dishwasher, washing machine, TVs, fridges, freezers, those kind of elements all work off electricity created by the PV panels. Both the oven and the stove work off LP gas. So that's the bottled gas. And then our hot water, we've got 2 systems. We've got the LP gas, which is the bottled gas, and we've got the biogas.
Clark designed the house to work on a minimal amount of energy in both winter and summer.
Yeah, I've elevated the house off the ground so that it's the old theory of hot air rises and cold air sinks, so that in winter the coldest air sits below the house and not in the house. And that requires less energy for us, and I heat up the house for it to be comfortable. And we heat up the house with wood burners.
The inside has also been insulated to allow both warming and cooling through the different seasons without the help of air conditioning.
There's voids in the floors, walls and ceilings that I've insulated, and then on the lining of the curtains I've put a neoprene liner. So we have a completely insulated shell. So in winter we completely insulate it, close it up, use a wood burner and generate the heat to keep the house warm, and in summer we open it up and we let a cool breeze flow through the house.
As Eskom struggles with its power supply crisis, more and more South Africans like Clark are making plans to go off the national energy grid. However, it may only be a select few that can afford to do so. Sumitra Naidu, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Let's bring you up to speed with the latest developments in the Garissa siege. It has ended officially. This is an update from the National Disaster Operations Center here in Kenya. The operation has ended. All 4 attackers involved in that particular event, according to the government, have been killed. The total number of fatalities, however, stands at 147. Let me repeat that, 147 confirmed fatalities. The 4 individuals who carried out the attack, which Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for, have been killed, according to the National Disaster Operations Center as well. Plans, of course, are underway to evacuate students and the other affected persons in this particular event. So then, the Garissa siege has come to a close. 147 people dead, 4 terrorists also killed in the process. Quick run through commodity prices here for you on what is a fairly sad day for the East African economy. Crude prices down by about 200 or so basis points. We've been keeping a close eye on this, especially with regard to Nigeria and what that portends for revenues, because of course Nigerian oil is benchmarked and priced against Brent crude. Coffee, however, enjoying a bit of a bounce, up almost 3 percentage points in trading today. And of course, tea prices, quite a bit of speculation in play over there, depending on how the weather does turn out. How do you keep poor girls in school? We'll give you alternatives to disposable sanitary pads next. Welcome back. Now, many poor girls in several countries right across sub-Saharan Africa tend to miss school during their periods due to lack of sanitary pads. And that, of course, has an enormous ripple effect right across the board due to that time lost. The cost of the disposable types often puts them out of reach of many. And a possible solution seems to lie in the reusable ones. On Grassroots tonight to look at an NGO-funded initiative in South Africa that is designed to provide these assets.
For just $15, you can buy 9 pads and 3 panties, and these can last up to 5 years. Sue Barnes, a former fashion designer, came up with the idea to help teenage girls in rural areas and townships who can't afford the additional monthly expense of feminine hygiene. Many skip a week of school each month to avoid embarrassment.
Just thinking that these girls are missing so much school, and my daughter being dyslexic, just thinking that if she had to miss a week, a month of school every month, she wouldn't catch up by the next month by the time she was missing school again.
UNICEF estimates that 1 in 10 school-going girls in Africa do not attend classes during menstruation. This is the case for many in this township school in KwaZulu-Natal. Before getting free pads from Sue, they simply use toilet paper.
Because my mother didn't have money to buy me pads, so that's why I was absent from school.
Disadvantaged girls use anything from rags and old clothes to newspapers, slices of dried corn and plastic bags as alternative to pads. Barnes visits no-fee state schools, giving sex education talks and distributing the reusable pads for free when she receives enough donations to have them made. It's an issue organizations across the continent have been working to address. In Rwanda, some women still miss work because they cannot afford sanitary pads. So this community-designed low-cost pad made out of banana tree fibers.
The idea was to make pads using something that was natural and could be harvested locally, because in addition to making a product that's friendly for women and girls, we also want to build the economy and create jobs. So we were looking for local materials that could be made into something really absorbent.
This NGO-sponsored factory produces the locally sourced pads. They plan to start selling them next month, a huge step forward for girls and women in places where even talking about menstruation is still considered taboo. Valdi Carosa, CCTV.